Short answer, no, for the same reason I said no in my prior video, could Rome have colonized America? They simply lacked any incentive to cross the Atlantic, leaving only accidental crossings when going to the Roman settlements in the Canaries as an option for Atlantic crossing. This video is, however, a follow-up to my prior video where we contemplated how the Romans could have established colonies in America, and will pick up after contact with the advanced cultures in Mexico. It is important to note that merely reaching and thus discovering a place need not have any real consequences. The Vikings have long since been proven to have reached and even settled in North America, but this led to no lasting or at least recognizable presence here. It is also speculated that the Polynesians could have reached and had contact with the Americans, and even speculation about Chinese fleets reaching the shores. What is clear, however, is that it was the Spanish that reached America and caused a very massive and permanent shift in the New World. The Romans might have reached America for one reason or the other, as their ships could potentially make it. As I mentioned in my video, could a Roman ship cross the Atlantic? But just arriving somewhere does not lead to profound changes. Even small colonies need not matter. The Roman settlement in the Canaries was after all unknown for a long time. So to make a real difference, a conquest of a large cultural center like the Spanish of the Aztecs is needed. So if we assume from the last video that the Romans had arrived near Veracruz in Mexico and gained contact with the Mesoamericans and Teotihuacan, could or would they have been able to conquer it, and if at all possible, how would this have taken shape? What would lead up to contact leading to this outcome? First off, the Romans did have ample opportunity for expansion back home around the Mediterranean basin, so it would not be necessary for ambitious Roman prefects to cross the Atlantic for such opportunities. However, the distance might cause less supervision, as Roman conquest needed to be given acceptable reason before the Senate. Basically, a Roman prefect in a province wanting to conquer neighboring territory needed to prove that they had wronged Rome by breaking treaties or attacking allies. This might be easier to prove without counter-argument if the territory was distant. If America had been discovered early in the period of Romans in the Canaries, a young Julius Caesar with great aspirations would serve as governor of Hispania Ulterior in 60 to 61 BC. Thus he might have had supervision of the Caribbean colonies and the contact with Mexico, and heard of the riches there that might pay his debts, debt which Roman politicians racked up a lot of to fund their careers. So Rome could easily provide politicians with motivation for conquest. It would not be easy to just go and conquer Mexico, however. Things needed to go just right, as it did for Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés in the Aztec Empire in 1519 to 1521. The Romans did not have firearms like the later Spanish, but they had ironworking and horses, which the Mexican cultures did not. The most important thing that they could have had, which also assisted the Spanish conquest, were diseases spawned from the close proximities to domesticated animals like the aforementioned horses, but not limited to them. Many diseases would be added by the time of the Spanish, but the advent of the Romans in the New World could likely have had the same negative health consequences for the natives as the real-world Spanish arrival. These diseases might even be the spark that could lead to a situation where the Romans would find their attack justified. If epidemics were to erupt in Mexico from the Roman coastal trade colonies, with severe loss of lives as a result, this might cause an anti-Roman sentiment, which would lead to attacks on the Roman settlements. This would be all the excuse that an ambitious provincial governor would need to initiate a campaign. He would, as earlier stated, be limited in what resources he would have available, and as there are no indications that the cultures of Teotihuacan was as brutal and disliked as the Aztecs, so the Romans would likely not find it as easy to find allies who would want to topple the established order. There always are those who would ally with the Romans to gain a better lot, but in the end the Romans would need to rely heavily on disease decimating the native population to win this. Just to put into perspective, Teotihuacan at around the birth of Christ had around 100,000 inhabitants. So the Romans would need the fighting capabilities of their adversaries to be heavily reduced. But if we assume the Romans simply allowing the siege to take its course and then move ahead in its wake, the native people would be weakened and panic could have spread too. And if natives aligned with the Romans fared better against the diseases, it would give the Romans a sign of divinity that would strengthen their claim to rule. The Romans were also known for clemency against those who surrendered easily, while being brutal against those who resisted too fiercely. This, coupled with the air of divinity from the disease, which would not affect the Romans like it did the natives, could lead to many cities and small kingdoms simply surrendering to the Romans and their allies. Those who aligned with Rome could then look forward to a better position in the new order of things. The main prize of a Mexican campaign would then be Teotihuacan, which was at the time one of the largest cities in the world and the largest in the New World. To take this city, it would need to be in disarray, with central authority crumbling under the disease and news of others either joining the Romans or being destroyed completely by them. There would need to be the same level of chaos as that which granted Tenochtitlan to the Spanish 1500 years later. If they were able to organize resistance and were not too hard hit by old world disease, it is difficult to see how the Romans would be able to take the city. But if we assume total chaos and the rulers seeing surrender as the best way to survive themselves, this could then be the result, with the Romans being greeted into the cities as victors. This would then effectively make the Romans the rulers of Mesoamerica. From here, an actual Romanization process could begin. Like in Roman Spain, Mesoamerica could very well be the focus for the establishment of many new veteran colonia to bind this distant land closer to Rome. Many things would be surprisingly alike: the Spanish Latinization of America, just with Roman villas instead of haciendas. Basically, Latin America would be Latinized 1500 years early, as Rome would not face any competition from the Old World in America. They would completely control the contact across the sea. The Norse longships and Canaries would not be developed until much later. This would create a situation where ample land across the sea would be available to also be offered to Roman foederati. Thus Rome would be able to offer new land to the Germanic tribes of the migration period. This could create Germanic frontier kingdoms around Roman America and lessen the migration pressure in Europe. It would be a very different world.